This is Rich Williams. You are listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
All right, good day, fine people. Thank you for tuning into the Matt Balaker podcast. Please click like. You don't have to smash it. Just click like. It feeds the algorithm, and encourage your friends to subscribe to this program because we have amazing guests like the gentleman joining us today. He's the pride of Schenectady. He's one of the best stand-up comedians out there, a brilliant joke writer. He's dealt with mall debarkment syndrome. He likes Patrice O'Neal more than Nanette. Please welcome Rich Williams to the program. How you doing, Rich?
I'm great. Good to see you again, Matt. It's that megawatt smile of yours.
Thank you. That's my my key to the middle, or the lower part of comedy fame. We met, about 20 years ago, and yeah. I remember being excited because I'm like, oh, I got booked at the Hollywood Improv. You know, I've been doing comedy like 14 minutes, and then I realized, I'm supposed to bring 8 to 20 friends who, and then so I get there and I see you, and they're all these kind of like wannabes, and you're just destroying. And I remember watching you and being like, wow, like this guy is just, he's made it. He's got charisma, stage presence, but joke writing. So I'm curious, like, I guess when did you start? Because when I saw you, you seemed polished. I'm just curious. Like, was that like your second year, or when did you start doing this?
Well, I started in '93. I did an open mic outside of my area in Syracuse, New York, and I did really well. My material was horrible, but then I tried for like 3 years on and off doing it. I would drive to Syracuse every Sunday night for an open mic, and I thought it was the same audience. So I would go and do brand new material every time, not realizing, and it was horrible. I would quit for 6 months. I moved to Boston for a while. If you're not funny, and if you're not from Boston, they circle the wagons to keep you out. And then I got serious about it in 1996. I never wanted to perform in my hometown until I thought I had an act, because I didn't want to bomb around here. I had a regular corporate job and all that. So I sold the place out. It was a very welcoming audience, and I did 20 minutes and I killed. But it was helped by people knowing me.
Oh, sure. It's a friendly crowd, but nonetheless, yeah. You had 20 minutes.
Yeah. And I also had the benefit of looking a lot like Bill Clinton at the time, and he was president. And this was before the Lewinsky scandal. So I would do corporate events as Clinton, and I wound up doing the Adult Video Awards as Bill Clinton.
That's right. Well, do tell.
So I did it in 97. I sent it. This is funny because I'm also a hypnotherapist on the side, just because all of this stuff has really helped me. I took a time management seminar the summer of 96, and it said, write down one thing you want to do in the next year that you've been putting off because it's out of your comfort zone. And I wrote down, I still have the booklet, send a tape of my Bill Clinton impression to the Howard Stern show, because that's what I really wanted. I wanted to be on Stern. I love Stern. Instead of sending it to them, I sent it to the AVN Awards, or the Porno Awards, as it's sometimes known. And they flew me out. They booked me. A comedy club owner, Hilarities in Cleveland, saw me, called his booker, and said, we got to headline this guy. And the other end of writing it down, I was on Howard Stern 6 months after I wrote that down. Oh, wow. I wound up getting Howard Stern because of the Porno Awards.
So this was kind of the infancy of the internet, Rich. Like, it wasn't as easy to just get addresses. Like, how did you know who to send it to?
I bought they have a industry publication, okay, and I just sent it to the name of the owner of ABN. And yeah, I mean, back then, so I wound up getting road work, and when the guy called me, Freddie DeMarco out of Missouri, he owned a club and he booked a bunch of different rooms. He's like, yeah, we want to headline you at Hilarities. I'm like, no. I'm just hosting right now in my hometown.
Slow down.
Yeah, I'm not prepared for this. So I featured, and it wasn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
But he booked me for like 4 months of continuous road work. And then what I would do, because like you said, there was no real internet, I would look in, there was this publication that had the listing of all the clubs and agents and stuff like that. As I was driving from Des Moines to Baton Rouge on the road, I would find the clubs in between and see if I can do a guest set to audition. And that's how I started getting a lot of road work. I did that for about 2.5 years. Then I moved to LA. So the best thing for me was doing stand-up almost every single night, and 4 shows on the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, there's no substitute for stage time, and I'd say there's stage time outside of LA, especially in the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s was probably kind of the worst, because I mean, you're under the gun for 5 minutes where you kind of have to tap dance and try to get your bits out. When you're on the road, when you're in Missouri, you can kind of breathe a little bit. You can take chances. You can experiment. Yeah. Like, what was the big differences you saw, Rich, from performing, call it, in the flyover states versus Los Angeles?
They really appreciated comedy in a different way. They were there to be entertained. And when I moved to LA, it was all about having an 8-minute set so you can get on TV. Everything in LA was built around doing something other than stand-up. So stand-up was just the way to get in. And it was mind-boggling to me, this idea that I had to bring 5 to 10 friends. I had just moved to LA.
I know 4 people.
Yeah, I knew one person. I said, if I had 5 friends, I wouldn't be doing stand-up. So
I'd have enough validation in my life. I wouldn't need to go on stage here.
Yeah, and then I realized my roommate, TK Madison, I don't know if you remember TK.
Oh yeah, of course.
He was running a bringer show with my friend, Brian Burke. And I said, okay, I can't bring 5 people, but I can bring comics. Mm-hmm. So I started booking comics that had to bring people. But we weren't making money on it. I mean, if we did, we'd make maybe $20. This was at Luna Park.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
One of the best rooms ever. We had our own Montreal showcases down there. I got jobs based off my performances down there. And it's funny because if you think it's hard bringing 5 friends to come see the show, try bringing 10 comics who are supposed to bring 5 friends. And their egos and, everybody canceled. And like, sure. I got it. But we had to rent a room for like $250, and every person less than 50 that showed up, we'd have to pay $5. So if only 40 showed up, we owed them another $50.
So you were on the hook for it. I mean, how did kind of working as a producer, in a sense, change your attitude, if at all, on stand-up?
My main side goal was to always help other comics. Mm-hmm. So it was very good from that perspective. I made a lot of comedy friends, and I was able to give people opportunities. Shortly after that, I got a job writing for the Best Damn Sports Show period and appearing on it. And I hired a bunch of comics I knew, because I knew it was important for people to get themselves on tape and get some credits. Mm-hmm. So I would hire them for sketches that I was writing, and they would get on the show. Lonnie Love, it was her first TV appearance. Joey Diaz, I put him on. It was his first TV appearance.
Was that, I know you're friends with, or we have a mutual friend, Brian Keith Etheridge. Wasn't he involved in Best Damn too?
He got me the interview for the job. I will be super grateful for him for that. And I had the interview, and it was mainly writing topical sports jokes during the summer when no big sports are going on except for baseball. So there's not a lot of stuff to pull from. But right after the interview, I drove home. I lived close to Fox Studios in Beverly Hills. And when rent was affordable, I wrote out like 20 jokes in 20 minutes and I emailed it immediately. And that's why I got hired, because I wanted to stand out.
Oh yeah, and for Gen Zers or young millennials, Best Damn, I mean that was part of the intro, was kind of ahead of its time. I mean, it was a sports show, but it was very comedy driven. It was Tom Arnold was on it, John Sally, it wasn't Chris Wilds, but
Chris
it was
Rowe.
Yeah, it was a panel show where they talked about sports, but they made fun of each other. It was really successful. How long of a run did it have, Rich? Was like at least 5 years?
I think it was 8 altogether.
Oh wow,
I got fired after a year and a half because I would fight for the comedy bits. I remember Derek Jeter was coming on, and he had been on Saturday Night Live the weekend before. And our boss they were all sports people, the executives. They weren't comedy people. So he was trying to get clearance to show on our show clips from Saturday Night Live. And I said, we're the sports Saturday Night Live. We can write our own sketches for him. And so it was a constant struggle with that type of stuff. And they brought me back to do some things after that. But yeah, it was a great experience. It's my first TV gig.
Well, congrats on that. And before your first TV gig, I mean, rent might have not been as crazy as it is now, but it's never cheap to live in Los Angeles. What did you do to make ends meet?
I was working remotely for the company that I had worked for right out of college. I was a headhunter for a computer consulting company. So I did that for 6 months, and then they said, we're not going to open an office in Los Angeles. So then I was on unemployment for a while. Then I got hired for a website in 2000. So I moved to LA August of 99, or no, the last week of July in 99. I was doing those shows at Luna Park, working for the consulting firm, got fired right around Christmas time. And then because of the shows at Luna Park, I got hired for this website. It was comedy.com.
Okay.
And this was during dial-up times.
Uh-huh.
So it was very difficult for anybody to, sorry.
Your 28 is buzzing you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how to do Zoom.
Well, you're still on it.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it so it's full screen. So yeah, I work for comedy.com, and how do I do this?
There might be a view tab on the top right, and you can click.
Yeah.
Speaker. And then on the bottom there's full screen. This is captivating content, by the way.
Yeah, I'm too old. I'm too old to do anything now.
So I see you.
Yeah. So I worked there, and it was writing topical jokes because they brought in a brand new group of people to take over the writing, brand new head writer, and I worked from home because he didn't care for my style of comedy, I guess. But it's interesting. The first writers there, I remember our first writers room. It was me, one guy I don't remember, and then Doug Stanhope and Zach Galifianakis.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And so I've been very fortunate. I've worked with great people. One of the things about LA is you think it's never going to end.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
So is that foreshadowing? How did it end?
Well, I had a lot of success. I wound up working at the beginning of each of these shows. Best Damn Sports Show period, Next for MTV, where it was a dating show.
Oh gosh. That was like the Sodom and Gomorrah production. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would write the funny things that they would say to each other. It was a real show, but some straight to camera stuff I would write. Date My Mom for MTV.
Oh, that was classic. Love that show.
Yeah. Another show called Exposed, where they were hooked up to lie detectors. I also wrote Howie Long's Tough Guys. It was like the all Madden team for every Super Bowl for 6 or 7 years. And I worked with like Charlton Heston. Like that, I had crazy opportunities. James Conn, Jack, The Rock. And I sold a movie to Tim Allen, and then he sold it with me to Disney. I wrote the script, didn't get made, but got me in the Writers Guild. I also worked as the very first audience warm-up comic for Last Comic Standing. And I did that for like 6 or 7 seasons. I got fired a couple times. They were mad that I wrote jokes for Gary Gulman and Ant for the roast.
Oh.
And I was like, I'm not going to jeopardize. I didn't know that was against the rules. I said, why would I jeopardize my job for $50 a joke?
Right.
And then I got sick. I got this weird balance disorder, and it just crippled me. At the same time, I stopped cold turkey taking my SSRI medications because I wanted to go out and party still, and I figured the two weren't good together.
Well, at least you had the wherewithal to eliminate one of the drugs.
Yeah, and it made me crazy. And I didn't put 2 and 2 together at the time. But the balance disorder, nobody could figure out what it was. And I was having symptoms from the withdrawal from Zoloft and the balance thing. So all the little cells, the hair cells in my left ear were wiped out, basically. So I feel like I'm on a boat. Or when people go on a cruise ship, they get off the boat, they feel like they're still on the ocean. That's how I felt. And saw 30 doctors. They didn't have any cure for it. Finally was in a research study at UCLA. They're like, yeah, you have this thing called maldebarkment syndrome or disembarkment syndrome. So it became very difficult to work because I didn't have any medication at the time. I would have to take naps during the day at work. I was working on Sports Soup, which was a spinoff of The Soup. And, you know, thankfully, if you're a comedy writer, you can do those things. You can take a nap under your cubicle. But
most comics nap during the day anyway, so it's not really that different.
But it became too much. And I come from a very weird family background. Everybody in my family pretty much died by the time I was 8.
Yeah, and that reminds you have a joke. It says, I can make anyone in the audience die. I just have to love you enough. What's the story there, Rich?
Well, so just to conclude that, I knew I could move back to my hometown and be with my extended family and buy a big house. That's why I have like a stone basement from the 1890s. So my mom, this is one of the jokes I would do. My mom got pregnant with me when she was in high school. So technically I've been to 2 senior proms. And boy, was I drunk at the first one. And then it goes out there. My mom was an alcoholic. She had her troubles, tried to get sober. My grandparents on her side got custody of me, which I always thought was funny. Like, they did a great job raising kids, obviously.
Take 2.
Yeah, let's try it with a boy. So my dad had left before I was born. I never knew him. Talked to him once in high school on the phone, and he was bizarre. And then he killed himself 6 months later with from what I heard, an intentional heroin overdose. But I lived with my maternal grandmother and grandfather. My grandmother was in and out of insane institutions or mental health institutions. And she died when I was 6. So it was like losing my first mom. Yeah. The hilarity ensues.
I'm surprised you're not a porn star yourself, but please continue.
Yeah, exactly. So then my mom came back and lived with my grandfather and I. She died of an accidental overdose when I was 8. Then I lived with my grandfather. He disappeared a couple years later. Like, when he's picking me up at school, my Uncle Donnie, who's really my mother's cousin, he picks me up. I'm like, where's my grandfather? Oh, he went down to Virginia Beach. He just got married to Dixie, who's now your step grandmother, who I met and really liked. So my whole life upturned again. I moved down to Pungo, Virginia, outside of Virginia Beach, and she was very religious, made me burn my Dungeons and Dragons games because she thought I was casting spells on her. And after a couple of years, they just decided they were too old to raise me. So I moved back with they sent me back here to Schenectady. I lived with my mother's cousin and her husband. And after a couple of years, things weren't working out. I don't want to go into it because they don't have the ability to share their side of the story. But I moved in with her sister, my mother's other cousin, and her husband, and 2 small kids. And so I worked for a long time trying to make that funny. Comics would tell me, don't do that. Don't talk about it. And I'm like, you don't understand, when you've gone through all that stuff, comedy has always been therapeutic for me.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a good example. Saturday night, I had to put one of my 3 dogs down. Mm-hmm. He was a rescue. I got him when he was 14, him and his dog sister. And he had a tumor and it was going to burst and all this stuff. And I kept him alive as long as I could. And I put him down, and it's like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But I thought the one good thing about him dying is I have the perfect excuse to get out of going to stuff now. Because if somebody says, why aren't you going? And you respond with, I have to go pick up my dog's ashes. They're not going to question you.
No. They'll
avoid you.
They're not going to press you on it very much. They'll give you a pass.
Yeah. So that joke in particular, I do this whole thing about everybody in my family dying and how you use humor to lighten that load mentally and emotionally on yourself. And I always pictured myself alone on Family Feud. Good answer. Good. Hello. And there's more to it. But then I would tell them, I would intentionally try to bring them really far down.
Mm-hmm.
Emotionally, and I would leave it be quiet. And then I would bring them back up. And in doing that, I love the levels of the tension created with the setup and then the joke.
I'm glad you said that. I think comedy, like live comedy at its best, is sort of like a concert or a good rock show. Like, you'll get pissed, you'll laugh, you'll blow off steam, you'll think things you didn't think were possible. And if you keep everyone at the same level, it's like a boring book or movie. It's like there's no variability. I think you had a tag, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it says not laughing won't bring them back. And that's such a good point, because it's like your pain is still going to be there. And if you're telling it on stage, you obviously have an angle to it, and you're kind of opening up a window to your life that we're now privy to as the audience. But it doesn't do you any good if we shut up, if we clam up.
Well, it was always funny to me because, of course, it's such a traumatic thing to discuss for people to hear, and they don't expect that at a comedy show. So I understand why they wouldn't want to laugh, because then they seem like a bad person. A few people would laugh. I go, yeah, it's funny. It's it's a bizarre thing to have happen. And then I'd say not laughing at the jokes won't bring them back. It's fine. And then sometimes I would have all different tags for this stuff. I'd say, some of you are taking it harder than I did. And I was you're already sitting down. But that one line is my favorite joke I've ever written. You better laugh at this. I can make everybody in here die. All I have to do is love you enough. We'll just wait and see who got it.
It's so dark.
Yeah, it's the classic thing of kids blaming themselves for divorces or death or whatever. And it's like, I don't know. It's a relief for people a lot of times.
Yeah. And it makes your act unique to, you know, I mean, like everyone talks about dating to some extent. I mean, I don't think there's such thing as like a hack topic. I think there are hack jokes because they're unoriginal and you can see the punchline coming a mile away. But when you're talking about your own experiences, it's really hard to look derivative. I mean, I think that's some advice. Like anyone wants my advice, but you know, that's what I would tell younger comics, like pull from your own experiences, and no one does that better than you. Like, I guess was there a struggle initially, Rich, where you're like just unwilling to do it? Or I guess at what point did you feel comfortable enough to at least attempt this material?
Well, there were a couple different issues that I had. One was I didn't want to capitalize on it, and I didn't want to present it in a negative light, like woe is me.
Right.
Because I despise sympathy, even if subconsciously I wanted sympathy or whatever. I had my best friend from college. His name is Jack McLeod. His dad died when he was in high school, and his girlfriend at the time kept going out with him for 6 more months. She was going to break up with him just before that, and then he died.
Yeah, doesn't want to look like the bitch who dumped him.
Right. And then he found out, and he was horrified. He was pissed. So college, he and I would make fun of each other all the time in front of other people, and they would get freaked out. He's like, "What are you doing for Christmas this year?" "What you do every year, standing over a cold grave, crying your eyes out." And I, like, there's people around us, and I'd go, "Hey, it's Father's Day coming soon. Why don't you pull out a Ouija board and give your dad a call?"
He misses you.
Yeah. And so it was such a dark subject that it bombed a lot of times when I was doing it. And again, I was told not to do it by different comics and Jamie Masada at the Laugh Factory.
Like people are here on a Friday night date.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you better call your mom after this set. But I always like talking about things you're not supposed to. So I talk about race, I talk about disabilities, I like all of it, because I can't stand that comedy has become scrubbed and has to be cleansed. And I don't even like saying politically correct, because I mean, that's been around since the 90s.
Sure.
But it's been so sanitized now, and people don't realize that. So I heard this phrase about 5 or 6 years ago: comedy shouldn't be punching down.
Right.
It should not punch down.
That's a very popular term of art.
I hate that with everything inside of me. Here's why. It implies that I'm better than these other people.
Yep.
I'm not punching down. I'm not above these people. I'm one of these people. And I don't make jokes I'm not mean with any of it. I'm joking around with you. I grew up in apartment complexes. It's not the projects, because it wasn't all stacked. They were like little townhouses of single moms, and I was there with my grandfather. And most of
they're ranch style projects. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and we were upper class poor, and most of my friends were black, and they did something that people called the dozens or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Well, we called it cracking. And
mama jokes, yeah.
Yeah, we would crack on each other, and they were really good at it. And I learned early on that
really good.
It's a power, and I need to get good at it, and I did. So I always, that's my love language: breaking balls with people.
Sure.
And I have a really good story about this topic. So when I was on the road, I did the Mall of America in Minnesota. And I had a joke at the time. I would update it depending on what horrible movie was out. And the movie, I think, at that time was Scooby-Doo. Okay. So bad. So I would say, and I was trying to make a bigger point, which I got to, but the initial joke was, yeah, I saw Scooby-Doo this weekend. That movie was so bad, Christopher Reeve walked out halfway through. Because he's in a wheelchair, he can't walk. And then I would say, oh, some of you in the audience are like, oh, you can't make fun of Christopher Reeve. He's raising money so the kids can walk again. And I'd say, no, he's not. He's raising money so he can walk again. Like, do you think when they come out with a cure, he's going to let any of the kids go in front of him?
He's like, I don't want to jump the line.
Yeah, I'm Superman. Like, I have to. And so it was important to me to talk about that for myself, and that I would have had more. I would have supported it more if he was raising money for something he didn't have, like sickle cell anemia or breast cancer. So after the third night, on a Friday night, sold out show, and I'm featuring, so it doesn't really matter, but there's a guy in a wheelchair right up in the front, and he's a quadriplegic. He has one of those straws that you blow into, and everybody that worked at the club, the other comics are like, you're not doing the Christopher Reeve bit tonight, right? I go, of course I am.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no, you can't do that. I go, yes, I can. Watch me. Because the point still stands. So I start it, and everybody freezes up. They're all looking at. I go, yeah, look at everybody's looking at him now, like he's got such a hard time at life. He's got the best seat in the house. What was that, $20,000 for that rig? And the audience hated me.
Yeah.
He comes up to me after the show, and he said, "Listen, comedy is one of the few things that takes me out of my day-to-day existence. I love it. Come here every week. Most of the comics won't even look at me, let alone address me, let alone joke around with me and tease me. Thank you for making me feel like just another part of the crowd." And I leaned in and I said, I don't talk to the audience after the show. No. I said, but no, like, I never wanted sympathy for my childhood. And so I extend the same thing to other people. I wasn't being mean to him. Mm-hmm. I was treating him like we're equals. It wasn't punching down.
You weren't punching down, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was you or Zach Galifianakis. I know you guys get confused a lot, but it was at Melrose around, call it 2000. There was a guy in a wheelchair in the front row. The first thing that was said after grabbing the mic was, I know I'm not going to get a standing ovation from this guy. And like similar, like he just breaks, I'm obviously it was a different person than your friend in Minnesota, but it broke the ice so perfectly. It kind of set the stage like, all right, we're going to joke here. And right. And nowadays, I think people might take it worse, but who didn't take it bad was the gentleman in the wheelchair. I'd never seen someone laugh harder.
That's the issue. It's all of these uptight people that are mad on other people's behalfs.
Yeah.
Like with the race thing, I used to do all black shows. I was like the only white guy who was doing them, except for there's one other guy, but he's like in a different, like that's all he did. Mm-hmm. I forget his name. He's very funny. But when I moved out to LA, my first friends there that I would get booked with were Gabriel Iglesias, Fluffy, Felipe Esparza, and Cat Williams. And I would do the Latino shows, and I would do the black shows at the Hollywood Casino. And they liked me because I didn't pander. I didn't make fun of white people. Yep. Oh, we're so corny. Oh, we can't dance. I would make fun of them. But they knew that it was like I'm in a locker room busting balls.
Yeah.
And so it's weird when it's mainly, I find that it's mainly white people that have an issue on other people's behalf.
Oh, they're allies, Rich. Like, it's their cause to help, I mean, I won't get too soapboxy, but I think that's one of the most condescending attitudes a person can have. It's like I have to stick up for these black people because I'm white and privileged. It's like, no, like you're not better. Like let them react how they want to react. You don't need to involve yourself here.
Exactly. And I added to some of my shows in recent years. I'm like, all you white people that are nervous right now or upset about what I'm talking about, Black people have survived slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, redlining. You think one of my fucking jokes is going to take them out? Oh, no. He said we take sneakers.
Right.
Like, what the? And so, yeah, they don't realize that they are being racist themselves by trying to protect people that don't need protecting.
Yeah. I interviewed a while ago Nick DiPaolo, and he was doing a set at the Stand, New York, and it was a small club, and he was busting balls with this black guy in the front row, or a group of them. They had a blast. He chatted with them afterwards. Obviously they were cool. And he said like some NYU students were giving him shit after the fact. And not like he cares at all what they say, but it just kind of speaks to your point, Rich, is like oftentimes younger people feel like it's somehow their calling card to stick up for quote unquote disenfranchised when they're not. Like that attitude is super. Yeah, I don't know if racist is the right word because I think that's overused, but it just it's very condescending.
Yeah, and there's two other aspects that really bother me. Because there's no barrier of entry to become a comic, you literally
Zero.
Go to an open mic and be able to write your name on a list. You can go do stand-up comedy. It seemed like around 2014, 2015, all these, at the time, they were called social justice warriors. They started flooding the open mics. And I saw it a lot in New York City just through Facebook and then policing each other. Sure. And you can't say this. I talked to a comic once who said they had to run their set by the people producing the show and producing the show. It's other comics that are booking the venue and putting 10 comics on. I was like, that's so antithetical to comedy. Nobody should have any say on my act. I'm not going to go along with any of that. And then Black comics started getting canceled. And Kevin Hart got the Oscars. He was supposed to.
Oh yeah, that was pretty famous. Yeah.
And they went back and found tweets where he was like goofing around and said stuff that people didn't like about if his son was gay or something. He already apologized for it. And then they wanted him to apologize again. He's like, how many do I have to apologize every time I'm up for a role? And when they took that from him, I was like, they're going to do this to anybody. I thought Black people were exempt from all of this because they usually don't play that bullshit. They can see through bullshit, and they're like, no, we're not going to do all this. And then Dave Chappelle, and I think a lot of people missed the message of what he was trying to say in that one special where he talked about his trans friend and how that person wasn't trans to him. Their tribe was being a comedian. And that's one of the things that's so great about being a comedian is that we're all oddballs. Most of us have some kind of mental illness. We don't fit in. We're supposed to be contrarians. We're supposed to question everything. We're supposed to go against the grain. And we're able to let go of some of that tribalness that we would otherwise have with, oh, I'm from New York, or I'm white, or I'm straight. I used to tell comics that back when I was in LA, I was there for 13 years. And I remember the Improv, that was my home club. One night it would be the Black Night, Mo Better Mondays. Then the next night would be
D-Ray's show,
Chop Suey or something. And then it would be all Asian. And then it was like gay night. And comics would go on stage, and some of them, their whole acts were about that one slice of their identity. And I would say, I remember one comic, I'm not going to say his name, but I said, you're not just gay. Like, it's awesome that you talk about it, but give me your perspective on life. Tell me other things that you find interesting. Like, I'm not just an orphan.
Right.
I'm not just
you also have balance disorders, so there's more to you.
Exactly. Yeah. I should be the ultimate minority because I'm an orphan who has a disability, but I don't get a pass. I get yelled at.
Yeah, well, you deserve it. I try to raise my kids, Rich, through your Facebook posts or your social media posts. And I'm paraphrasing, but you had one that I mean this seriously, is like, I hope they live their life like this. And I try to as well, very imperfectly, but some to the extent of, even if you are a victim, don't act like one. Like, don't adopt a victim mentality. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you paint yourself as a victim, I learned this through a lot of self-help work on myself. I went to the Landmark Forum, which people were saying was a cult, but it's the only cult I know where they encourage you to bring friends and family members. And it's for a weekend. But also getting certified as a hypnotherapist. I always viewed myself as a survivor, which was great for me because it allowed me to overcome things and live out my dreams. The problem with that identification of I'm a survivor is I have to keep surviving things, whether it's real stuff or stuff I make up in my head. So if I'm a victim, if that's my identity, subconsciously, I'm going to have to be victimized over and over again and look at everything through that lens. And if you're a victim, there's nothing you're powerless. So if I'm a victim of everything, I don't have any responsibility for what I'm doing. When the reality is, I'm the captain of the ship. The good things I like in my life, the things I don't like in my life, it's all my responsibility. If I take responsibility for it, I can change it. And this idea that life's not fair, yeah, of course not. We live in America. Like, we have fat homeless people.
Lots of them,
yeah. People that live in other parts of the world, like, for them to have a cell phone, just all this stuff, it's all perspective. And so if you are constantly being a victim, it's really going to mess up your life because then you don't have any control over it.
That's a good point. I want to get your thoughts, because one thing I kind of grappled with when all the Louis C.K. controversy came out, I mean, and people have been gross for forever, like, if like some dude flashes himself in front of me, like, maybe I'd freak out more than someone else. Like, I guess my point is, two people or more can experience the same thing but have very different reactions, and someone might not be wired to cope as well. So, like, how would you, and I'm not bashing what you're saying, I'm agreeing with your premise, but I'm also trying to be sensitive to people that maybe don't have the resiliency of others, and might see the same thing, but really just, it kind of messes with them more, and they don't want it to. Like, what advice would we have to those people?
Well, I have an interesting story about the Louis C.K. thing, which I'll get into after this, but I'll take my own example. My mother was an alcoholic. She was in and out of my life. I was afraid of her for much of my childhood. I didn't know her for much of my childhood. She died, and so I have abandonment issues and all that. And I'm an orphan. I'm 52 years old now. This happened when I was 8. How long do I get to use that as an excuse? Like, yeah, I would prefer that didn't happen. I would,
right.
I would give anything. But how long can that trauma be used? How much can I get out of it? It's like, is it happening to me right now? No. I can't linger in this forever. And yeah, believe me, I know about trauma. I've been through a lot. But if you get in a car accident, your bones eventually heal. And so here's the thing with Louis C.K. Oh, this is going to get me canceled. I hate saying canceled too. When I had heard the rumors about Louis C.K. Before it hit the news, I think most comics had, and I didn't know Louis at all, never shared the stage with him. And what I had heard was that I knew one of the people who made an allegation about him publicly. And in that case, it was different because he was on her pilot and it was in a work environment. The other one I had heard was after a comedy festival, the shows were done for the night. They were in a hotel room, everybody was drinking, and he asked if he could do that. And they were like, yeah, I guess, or whatever. I don't know exactly. I don't remember exactly. But I heard that he held the door closed so that they couldn't leave. To me, that was the bad part.
Yeah.
That's the incomprehensible part to me, because
it's like forced incarceration kind of.
Yeah. It's like he asked them and they said yes. And like, people do crazy stuff when they're drunk. Like, women have done crazy stuff to me. And it's so hard to talk about this stuff because people will pick it apart and go, well, he didn't say enough for the victims. And he was okay. Imagine a rock band and all the crazy shit that comics are crazy. And we do crazy shit and everybody's drunk and we're in a hotel room and we're partying and people hook up and all this other stuff. But it was him holding the door for me that really, I hated him for that.
Yeah.
I spoke out about it, and I rarely speak out about other fellow comics. It's one of the golden rules. You don't badmouth people that are within that group. And then I read the New York Times piece, and that part of the story wasn't covered. There was nothing about him holding the door closed.
Mm-hmm.
And I researched it more. I was like, wait, that's the part that, otherwise it's just him asking if he can masturbate in front of two fellow comics. And then they try to bring in all this power dynamic. It's like,
right.
Yeah. So he's only able to date or hook up with women that are his level of fame. That doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I got asked to open for him in my hometown, like home area. And I said, yeah. I went, it was at the Funny Bone, and we're in the green room. It's me, Kevin Brennan, a couple other people, I forget, and Louis. And I said, hey, this is the only reason why I did it. And this is when he was doing the secret shows because he was still toxic. I said, Louis, I want to apologize to you because I publicly bashed you. And while I don't agree with what you did, I think that's a weird fetish. I didn't even say that part. I just I don't agree with what you did, but I got the story wrong. And I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I appreciate it. And then later I said, but you are living proof that there are such things. Let me try that again. You're living proof that there are such things as a dumb question. So, yeah, I mean, that's where I come down on it. And on the flip side, I know a comic that I was friends with, and he had a consensual relationship with a female comic, and he did something that she didn't consent to, which is a violation, and I publicly called him out. And to me, it's rape. And I went after him directly on Facebook. He's blocked me. So yeah, I have zero tolerance for men being predatory, but I also have the logic and reason to say, okay, some things are, some things aren't.
Yeah,
it can't be a witch hunt. So
that's I mean, it brings up kind of a related question, and I grapple with this like in Kevin Hart's situation, he apologized, and I trust that that was from him. When should a comedian apologize for a joke, if ever, in your opinion?
Never.
Yeah.
Unless they've completely changed their mind on what the joke was. Like, first of all, it's insane that comics are being held to the level of politicians. We're just talking. These are words and thoughts and ideas. So yeah, when I would see comics apologizing for stuff, for jokes,
Yeah.
I'm like, why? Why would you do that? The mob is never going to be happy with it.
Well, there's no amount of groveling. Like, I mean, the answer I have now, Rich, is when it's your choice and you feel like you did something wrong and it's uncomfortable for you. And I say, I did this joke and I didn't like it. Not, and also I wonder, like, does apologize even change anything? But I mean, I just think if it's not a mob or outside parties kind of provoking someone to do it, cool. You know, like maybe you've changed.
Yeah.
And like, you can, like, I think jokes are very similar to like writing characters of a story or lyrics to a song. They're not necessarily what you think. Sometimes they're antithetical to what you think. And it's kind of fun to just like play different aspects or characterizations on stage to get reactions. It's almost like joke sonar, like throw stuff out there, bounce it around. And sometimes like the backlash is sort of fun. I mean, I don't like it all the time, but it's like there's a little bit of an appeal to that. Like I really despise this idea, like what you say in jest, there's truth to, or you're somehow hurting people. Like what say you?
Most of the time when people get upset with my jokes, and it used to be rare because people understood what I was doing. Most of the times when they get upset now, things I post on Facebook, I haven't been doing as much stand-up for the last couple of years, but they don't understand the point of the joke. Mm-hmm. They just hear a keyword like black or Mexican or woman or whatever. They don't realize what the joke's actually about, or mm-hmm. who the target of the joke or the butt of the joke. It's usually me. I'm usually the target of the joke if you think about it. I'm trying to think of an example. Here's one that I was doing for a while. I said, I love mixed crowds because that's when I would get the best reaction. I'd say, I have bad news for all you white devils in the audience. If somebody calls you a racist now, you're a racist. There's nothing you could say to prove that you're not. It's
an accusation is all the proof you need. Yeah, go ahead.
What's that?
An accusation is all the proof you need.
Yes. And I'd say, there used to be one thing us crackers could say. I can't be a racist because I have a lot of, I would hold the mic out, and the white people say, even the black people say, black friends. I go, right. Yep. Now, as soon as you try that, a black person pops up out of nowhere and goes, oh, you have black friends? Let me guess, you voted for Obama, too. Fuck out of here. I'm like, they've taken that away from us. You can't use it anymore. So now, basically, I don't see any benefit to having black friends. I have white friends who sell weed. And so the joke about that is, imagine me thinking that I need to have black friends just to cover myself, right. to not be seen as a racist. Like, who would do that? And there are people who do it, but meanwhile, I'm calling the white people white devils and crackers and all that. And it's just funny to me.
It's hilarious.
Why would he say, oh, he doesn't have black friends anymore? Like, what? Somebody asked me, how many black friends do you have? I go, I don't count them. I don't.
Yeah, you're like, well, he's more of an acquaintance. He's kind of a casual buddy. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, people are just, it's because of the culture now that if you don't go along with every single thing on the left, you could get kicked out of the group too and have your life ruined.
I know you mentioned earlier about unwritten rules, and I believe this too. Like, I stick up for a lot of comics, even if I don't quote unquote like their acts. I just don't have a strong feeling. Like if they say something I might disagree with, it's like, okay, like cool,
Yeah.
do your thing. But it does seem, and maybe it's younger people, maybe I'm the old guy in the room wagging my finger, but like for other performers to like be outspoken about jokes versus actions, I get. Like if someone's doing something off stage, yeah, if they're treating a group of people poorly, don't associate, call them out like you did. God bless you for doing that. But like for bits, like who cares? I mean, I think the bigger problem is then you get a problem of one-sidedness. And I think I always thought it was kind of a problem anyway, like 20 years ago. I think it's just gotten much more intense. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, art is supposed to go against the grain, certain parts of art, not all of it. Right. And I don't really consider comedy an art. It's more of a craft to me.
Yeah.
But it used to be in the 80s, it was the religious right that would try to get people canceled and burn their albums and put parental warnings and all that type of stuff. And so it was very easy for people in the entertainment and arts world to push against that.
Sure.
Because
the kind of Jerry Falwell era, like Pat Buchanan types. Yeah.
Right. And it was cool to be avant-garde and push against that. Now the people that were pushing against that are doing it to the artists and entertainers. And it's not considered cool to be pro-Trump, for example, or to question some of the stuff that's going on in our country. They want to shut you down. It's not even about polite civil society. It's you're not allowed to think certain things anymore.
Right.
Which is scary.
Oh, it's super scary. Like, yeah, I feel stupid saying this, but I didn't vote for Trump. And I got to a point where I found myself being sympathetic to people who would do material that wasn't just so knee-jerk, I hate you, not because I felt like on their side, so to speak, but more just like, I want them to be comfortable saying what they're going to say. And it might be funny, but it was like, all I heard was, oh, he's this or that. And it got so hacky where you could see where it's coming before it's happening. And like, how does that help? And, like, how does that improve the craft? I don't think it does.
Yeah. There's not a lot of very talented comics. And it seemed like more in the big cities in LA and New York, maybe. New York's always had a rougher edge where they kind of do whatever they want. But but it seemed like people were trying to get applause.
Yes.
Instead of laughter and pandering to their audience and
100%.
Struggle sessions. I did a joke. I did a campaign event, a fundraiser for Bernie Sanders back in 2016. I'd been a lifelong Democrat. Then I saw how they screwed him, and they accused everybody who supported him of being Bernie bros. Then I looked into that, realized that Hillary's campaign did that to Obama supporters, called them Obama bros. Like literally the same stuff.
That's not even original. You just changed the name of them.
Right. She also her campaign spread the rumor about his birth certificate. We had the ability to research these things now. So I started researching more and more stuff, and they got caught rigging the primaries against Bernie. It's not in question. Some people still think that didn't happen. Donna Brazile admitted it. Elizabeth Warren admitted it. And so I started like researching stuff, and I realized, a lot of this stuff we've been lied to about. And before, you had the major newspapers and the TV stations, the TV news, nightly news. That was it. You couldn't research stuff. What are you going to
go get microfiche? Yeah, go to the library.
And so now they don't want you to do your research.
You're castigated. It's almost like it's a negative. Like, listen to the experts. Don't do your research.
Right. And so you have comics doing all the anti-Trump stuff, and it becomes hacky after a while. And I don't care if people don't like Trump. Like, yeah, go ahead, like do your act.
Yeah.
And I tried to take a different approach because I don't like to be political. I like to talk about culture in my act, but I said, and where I live, there's a lot of people that are pro-Trump. So I took a totally different path on it. I said, regardless of your politics, just on a human level, I feel really bad for Hillary Clinton. She thought she was going to win. She thought she was ordained, and it's got to be crushing her. You know, she's in Chappaqua right now. Like, I can't believe this.
It was my turn.
Yeah, I had Jay-Z and Beyonce doing a benefit for me. I had the FBI helping me get out of my trouble. I fucked Bernie Sanders. And sitting in the corner, Bill's just going, you lost to Hitler. I don't know how you did it. The first time you lost to a black man in America, this time you lose to Hitler. You know I won twice, right, honey? Don't hit me with the phone. And so that's what I thought was funny. Like, imagine you're Hillary Clinton and you lived in the White House for 8 years. You're getting ready to go back. Your husband, who got impeached and he did all this crazy stuff, he's more liked than you are.
Oh, he'll get paid $500,000 for a speaking engagement tomorrow.
Hillary lost to the most hated man in American politics. What does that say? Like, that's got to be heartbreaking. Whether you hate her, like her, whatever, that's what's interesting to me. Not, oh, she's a bad person, he's a bad person. Like, yeah, that's a political debate.
I don't know why that brought. I remember talking to someone after, I guess it was the 2016 election, and I'm part Slovenian, and so is Melania. And it wasn't even political. I just said, like, yeah, she's the hottest first lady we've ever had. Like, she's hot. And like, they can't admit she's hot. I'm like, I'm not even talking. I'm just like, if you see a photograph of this person, will you think she's attractive or not? And I was like, oh, well, she's not my type. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, shut up.
It's so, that's when the people on the left lose credibility to me. Like, she was an actual model.
Right.
And they didn't put her on the cover of any magazine during the 4 years.
No.
Like, that's disgusting to me.
Mm-hmm.
They always do it with the president's wife, the first lady. And to have an actual model who's wearing designer
this isn't going to happen a lot. You got to take advantage of it.
We had her and Jackie Kennedy. That's it.
That's it.
But the trans issue is another one that I'm not going to go too into because you'll get this removed from YouTube. But I support trans people. I actually have a pro-trans joke in my act because, again, it's not about the technical issues of it. It's about the reality of it. So the joke is about how everybody, because of social media, they think they are important, and everybody needs their opinion.
Yeah.
And when Bruce Jenner transitioned to Caitlyn Jenner, everybody was upset. And I saw somebody on Facebook write, well, I'm still going to call him Bruce. When? Next time you two are
when
going
you hang out.
Yeah, this is not somebody you'll ever meet in your life. What are you talking about?
When you're in Calabasas.
Right. And so the joke is about it's not even about trans stuff. It's about this oversized view of ourselves as being so important that we have to comment on everything.
Right.
I support trans people. I don't support everything that's going on in that world. Like the stuff for the kids, that bothers me.
Sure.
It doesn't mean I'm not supportive of people. It's funny to me that being just gay now or just lesbian is almost considered square.
Oh, it's boring. Yeah, it's very 2006 to come out. Like, it's just like you have to be pansexual if you want to make headlines.
Right. And that whole world, like, if you say the wrong thing, they could try to destroy your life, but all the terminology keeps changing. So it's like, all right, I don't want to wade in.
Right. Well, one thing that's, going to get you a lot of likes on social media is if you talk about a friend who I almost said committed suicide. It should be died by suicide, Rich. And you knew him a lot better than I did, but I knew him decently well. Can you talk to us about your relationship with Brody Stevens and how you got to know him?
I love Brody so much. He was one of the first people I met when I moved to LA. We were at an open mic in Westwood by UCLA.
The Bruco show, I think.
Yeah, I think it was. This was in '99, and I didn't like him. I'm like, where's all this arrogance coming from?
It's a common theme for the person.
Yeah. And then I talked to him in real life, not just seeing him on stage, and I got it. And I always wanted people to get it with Brody, that he would turn people off because he'd be on stage and he's bragging, I did this, I did that. But if you look at what he was bragging about, it's hysterical that he would brag about it. Like, I make money. I can afford to take my mother to lunch and pay half. Like, it's not something you would brag about. We're bragging that he got cut out of funny people.
I can get on the Paramount lot.
Yeah. And so I would book him every time I could. And when I got hired at Best Damn Sports Show, they had me do audience warm up. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. I got to work on the show as well. So I got Brody hired. That was his first TV gig. And he was just amazing at it. And I think that it helped refine his style, because poor Brody, it was a 5-day-a-week, 2-hour show on air. So it'd be like 4 hours. He would have to keep the crowd going the whole time. And it was the same crowd every day because it was paid people. And sometimes it was like homeless people and stuff like that. So they were all paid to be there. So they had heard all of his jokes. And he started doing, I don't know if he did this prior, but he would start doing, where are you from? What high school? And he would know high school, because he couldn't do his jokes. They were there Monday. It's Friday. They were there Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday. And I was always really protective of Brody. I knew that he was like from To Kill a Mockingbird. Mockingbirds just want to sing and make music. They don't want to hurt anybody. And I knew that he was fragile in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so bizarre. It was so funny. I sold him, I had at the time it was a big deal, a 3-chip camcorder, Sony. And I'm like, you got to document what's going on with you. And I'm expecting him to record his sets. He goes, Williams, been using the camera. Let's see what I got. He shows it to me. It's him practicing throwing pitches, because he used to be a pitcher for Arizona State.
Good one too, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just him alone in a park throwing a baseball. And I'm like, Brody, and then he's doing like running sprints back and forth and doing like jumping jacks. He bought it for that, and it was legit. He was so funny to me, and just such a great guy. Everybody loved having Brody around. And yeah, we kept in touch. We did New Faces for the Chicago Comedy Festival together in 2000. And he's the only person I wanted to hang around with. And Zach Galifianakis helped him out tremendously with his career. I actually wanted to do a reality show based around Brody, but I didn't have the pull or the money to do it. And then Zach did it with him for Comedy Central, which then went on to HBO.
Yeah, that was like hard to watch though. I mean, I think that's part of the point. But yeah, please continue.
Yeah, and then Brody had his breakdown where he did Montreal. He got sick and he was on antibiotics or something like that. And next thing I know, I hear he's in the psych ward at UCLA. I get a hold of him through, I think it was MySpace back then, or maybe just through email. I'm like, Brody, what's going on? I'm going to come down there. I thought that whoever had him committed, they just didn't know Brody, so they didn't realize how his brain worked. I'm like, they just don't get it. He's not crazy. He's Brody. And yeah, and I hesitate sometimes to talk about Brody because I don't want people to think that I'm like clout chasing. I mean, I'm in my basement in a house in Schenectady. I'm not trying to do anything. But like, I just loved him. And when I found out that he hung himself, I literally fell to the ground and was crying. Because he was like, he was too sweet for this earth.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very gentle. Even though he was big, he seemed aggressive, he took things to heart. And he was so nice to just random strangers. A big loss. And it's funny how many people would do his cadence.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be around him sometimes. I'm like, Brody, I have to do a show, and I can't because then I'm going to start talking.
Sure.
Like,
where'd you go to high school?
Yeah. But he was just a gem, and there'll never be anybody like him.
No, I think unique is overused. He was unique. How do you want him remembered?
On stage, daring, brave, could make people laugh at anything. One of the funniest things, I think Sarah Silverman said this about him, or maybe Amy Lynn Raskub, I forget. But Brody would be on stage and the audience would find themselves in a fight with Brody that they didn't even realize was going on. He would just start attacking them. And he was so naturally gifted at making something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And so courageous to go on stage with a tambourine and no act. And in real life, just a sweet, gentle soul who loved his mom and fought with his sister, but loved his sister and missed his dad. And I remember one of the messages I sent to Brody, I listened to him on a podcast and he was talking about how he got picked on when he was a little kid and how he peed his pants sitting in the chair at school because they wouldn't let him take a bathroom break and everybody was making fun of him. And it was so vulnerable. And I sent him a message and like, Brody, that little kid, if you had told him where he would wind up, that he would be working in television, he would appear in the biggest comedy of, I don't know, of all time or whatever,
right.
money wise. If he would be doing stand-up for a living, that little kid would not believe it. You've made it.
Mm-hmm.
You always think that you're not making it. You made it. And I just wanted to hug that little kid because I saw that little kid in Brody every time I looked at him.
Well said. Well, on that note, Rich, where can people learn more about you, what you're up to, and any clout chasing you want to do? Where can we direct this traffic? Nowhere. Okay. I was like, there's nothing I can say to top what you said about Brody. So.
Well, it's funny because like all these years of doing stand-up, I've never had a website. I don't like promoting stuff. I don't like being on camera as well. Even though I've been on TV 100 times, the people don't recognize me. Nobody knows me. My stand-up suffered because I had to get a job to support myself out in LA, and they were always writing jobs on comedy shows or dating shows that had comedy elements or sports shows that had comedy elements. And so I didn't do stand-up the way that I didn't put everything into it. And I don't like promoting my shows. I don't like doing any of that. But I'm starting up a YouTube channel called Secrets of Stand-Up. And it's to tell people, to share for free everything I've ever learned about stand-up and what the old rules were about, like not publicly criticizing other comics unless they've stolen or done something really bad. And here's something I'll tell you. The best advice I ever got from a stand-up comic was summer of 96. I had started getting real serious about it. I was hosting shows at my local club. They had a headliner come in. It was supposedly his first weekend headline ever. Mm-hmm. He was from Boston. And because it was the summer, there weren't a ton of people. It was in their smaller room. He was so damn funny. I asked him for advice, and he said, look, if you lift weights once a month or once a week, you're never going to get bigger. You have to commit with 100% of who you are. Just like lifting weights, you have to write every day. You have to perform every day. And I said, well, there's no open mics for comedy around here. Mm-hmm. There literally were 0 open mics. He said, go to a poetry open mic. Go to spoken word, bands. Do that for 6 months. Write every day, perform every night possible, and then move to New York City or LA and give it a real shot. I took his advice. I went to like these band open mics. Nobody's paying attention. I'm screaming. People are like, oh, you think you're Sam Kinison? I'm like, no, nobody's listening. And I wound up going on the road instead of the 6 months and then moving to New York or LA. And then I finally moved to LA, and I saw him at the bar at the Improv. And I was working on Best Damn Sports Show, so I had a good end to my story for it. I said, hey, I reminded him of the story, and I said, I just want to thank you. That really changed the trajectory of my career and my life. It was Bill Burr. And he went by Billy Burr back then when he headlined. He's like, oh, thanks. And I could tell it made him uncomfortable. And so I did it to him 2 more times after that. So at the Comedy Store, like a year later, I'm like, hey, you probably don't remember me. I want to thank you because you told me that. But it was the best advice ever. Like, if you join the Marines, you're a Marine. Mm-hmm. If you get picked by the New York Giants to play football, you go to training camp. That's your life. And you need to approach it that way because it's not always going to be fun. And there's things that you're not going to want to do. But it is amazing.
Well, Rich, this has been amazing. Please join us again. Really appreciate your time.
I love you, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.